All right. All right. Well, that's fair enough. Last night, we talked about this a lot yesterday on the show. And one of the things we wanted to see, obviously, after kind of only going 4 of 11 in that season opener against Morehead State, we wanted to see this Indiana team shoot better from behind the 3-point line. They also struggled from the free throw line in that opener, going 21 of 22 last night. I mean, I think we know what this team has defensively. They suffocated Bethune-Cookman yet again, and then they knocked down some really big-time shots last night. The series that kind of or moments that stood out to me last night was Trey Galloway coming in off the bench, knocking down 2 big threes, and that seemed to be the spark that team needed, because after that it was ball game over. They just kind of cruised. What were some of your kind of takeaways? I think the 3-point line going 10 of 24, that's about what you need throughout the course of the season. If you can be in that ballpark, I think that's a really good sign for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I think everyone was, kind of holding their breath after they hit the first couple threes to see if it would continue that way, especially after obviously the last few seasons, especially after the first couple games here. And then obviously on Monday where they only attempted 11, which you can't only attempt 11 threes and expect to win the Big Ten or expect to compete for Sweet 16s and Final Four. So that was definitely a step in the right direction, at least taking 24. And that's what they needed to do, right? They were playing against a 2-3 zone. So they were forced to at least take some shots to keep the defense honest. And those first couple that went in obviously relaxed them. And that's, I think, one thing, even going back to some of the guys who were here with Archie Miller and were even recruited by him. That's one thing that I think, was the big downfall, was there just wasn't a lot of confidence even after the first couple shots were missed. And you even saw that last year where if they missed a couple shots, just the confidence from the sidelines was still there. So especially if you make them, right, that confidence is going to go up even more. And you got Miller Kopp involved as well. And everyone just looks a lot more comfortable even taking shots from the perimeter. Tamar Bates hasn't shot the ball great from the outside to start the season, but he's taking them, right? Jalen Hutchifino didn't shoot the ball great last night, but is at least taking those shots. And that's what you need to do, especially in these early games, right? Because let's be honest, they could have hit 5 threes and gone 5 of 24, and that still wouldn't have changed the outcome of this game. So you need to get that confidence going and seeing the ball at least get up there and having some open looks. And that's what Indiana did. But all in all, I mean, the one of the bigger takeaways for me is just the playmaking ability of Jalen Hutchifino. We've talked about it all offseason. We talked about it in the first couple exhibition games. Didn't shoot the ball great, but had a terrific floor game all around. And I think he really settled into that role as the game went on, especially towards the end of that first half, where he realized his shot was not going to fall and this was not going to be his scoring night. And he took over kind of those main ball handling duties and obviously finished with 8 assists to 2 turnovers there, 3 turnovers it was with the late one. But his poise, his feel for this offense as a freshman, just 2 games in, is really outstanding. And his ability, I think, one of the more underrated parts of his game is in transition. And we've heard Mike Woodson talk. They want to play faster. They want to be quicker and get out in transition a little bit more this year with the versatility and the athleticism this team has. Xavier Johnson does that to a certain extent, but he's just not that playmaking guard in transition. He's looking to get downhill, whereas Jalen Hutchifino, right when he gets a rebound, if it's a defensive rebound, he's looking up, ready to advance the ball. And you saw a couple times last night and even Monday, hitting Miller Kopp open in transition and really kind of dragging out the defense until the last possible second to get the ball over to whoever that shooter may be. And that's a step that Indiana did not have, and that's a part of this offense that Indiana did not have last year in Mike Woodson's system. And it's quite evident through 2 games that they're going to try to push the pace, whether or not it's a guard or a forward who grabs the rebound. And they're going to get out and go, and they're going to get some easy buckets. And you saw that last night as well.
Well, Alec, earlier I talked about the fact that last night you had a couple of guys that didn't shoot well, starters for that matter, in Jalen Hutchifino and Race Thompson, who combined hit 3 field goals, but the rest of the team shot 65, 68%. A very similar thing happened the other night when Xavier did not have a good shooting night. The rest of the team still picked them up, This is something Indiana did not have last year. They had maybe 3 guys that they were counting on, and if one of them went down, it was greatly noticeable. Now you've got other guys that are stepping up. You've got Miller Kopp, who's hit 6 out of his last 3-point attempts. You've got Trey Galloway, who is now a threat from the 3-point line. Malik Renew is a threat from the 3-point line. There were 6 different players that hit from the 3-point line last night, and then they go and damn near set a record at the free throw line a game after shooting so poorly. These guys can shoot, so there's no concern with shooting. It's simply between the ears at the free throw line, and then behind the arc. It's I forget what player had said it in regards to the free throw shooting, but they said that they took it very serious in practice this week, and that made a difference. It obviously conjures up in my mind thoughts of them going out and shooting thousands of free throws, but just doing it in an environment to where there's no pressure. Well, now you got to put that pressure on yourself, and by meaning saying they took it seriously, I assume that they understand that and somehow were able to manufacture some type of environment like that. But the point that I'm making is Indiana looks like a team that no matter if they have 1 or 2 players that are not having a good shooting night, man, there is a long line of guys that they can count on to back that up.
Yeah, and let's not get this twisted, right? Indiana's not going to hit 10 threes every single game. They're not going to go 21 to 22 from the foul line every single game. But this obviously shows this. Well, they don't need to, though. That's the thing. This is great that they have, because it obviously shows everyone they do have the ability, they have the players, they have the skill set to do that. At the end of the day, it's just mental, and they're probably not going to get the same looks that they did last night against some of the better teams in the Big Ten. Certainly not against the Carolinas, the Kansases, and the Arizonas. Right? We'll see the first test against Xavier next week, but this just shows that they have that in their tool belt and their skill set as a team. That if they need to rely on shooting 1 or 2 games this year where they really don't have anything else, they probably will be able to at least get something going from that point of view. But they're not going to go 10 to 24. They're not going to start out 8 of 16 probably the rest of the season, right? They were in double digits when it comes to made threes last year, just 4 times. So, let's not get carried away and start thinking that they're going to become this prolific shooting team, which they haven't shown in the last decade almost. But it is a welcome sight to actually see the ball go down. The bigger aspect that I think is what should be super exciting, which probably will lead to better looks from 3 and raise that average from about 5 made threes a game to closer to probably 7 or even just 6. Just increasing it by 1 is the playmaking ability of everyone on this roster, right? They have 27 assists last night on 35 made field goals. At one point through the second half, just in the second half alone, they had 10 assists on 10 made field goals. And they basically had that throughout the entire second half until they started to bring in some of the end of the rotation there at the end of the game. And that's pretty phenomenal, regardless of who you're playing. The ball movement, 8 assists from Jalen Hood-Schifino, 6 from Xavier Johnson, 4 from Tamar Bates, and a couple other guys with 2 each, right? That shows you that you don't just have 1 or 2 guys. That is now 4, 5, 6 different guys who can make plays off of the dribble. And the biggest thing is that playmaking ability to get into the paint opens up so much more. And you saw so many more open shots, whether they were, kickouts to Miller Kopp, to Trey Galloway, right? Trey Galloway, I don't think, regardless of who would have been guarding him, probably hasn't seen an open 3 like that in his career. And he's not even that great of a shooter. That just shows you how much those defenders have to drop into the paint to stop the dribble drive. Whether it's a nice little shovel pass that Jalen Hood-Schifino and Xavier Johnson had multiple times and have shown multiple times this season to Race Thompson, Trace Jackson Davis, or Malik Renew. That's the major thing that you got to take away that will translate to each and every game. Obviously, that will help the shots fall, but at the end of the day, you can still have a million open shots, and that still needs to go in. But the playmaking ability of this team is I think what has definitely stood out more than anything else over the 2 games that we can really take anything from, and at the end of the day we still can't take a lot from because of the level of competition.
Well, there are 2 things to me. One of them is I go back to the off season, and and things just simple like media days. I felt like the players had a newfound confidence about them. They felt comfortable in their own skin, and I think Mike Woodson kind of instilled that in them, in that confidence. And I think that was obviously where you see some of these confident shots coming from. But the other thing that I think you saw last night when you talk about that assist, 27 assists to 35 made buckets, about sweared on air. The thing that stands out to me is there's a lot of trust in this team that somebody else can get the job done. And you go back to, we talked about this in the first segment, for Jalen Hood-Schifino and for Xavier Johnson to go a combined 3 of 11, but to have 14 assists, 9 rebounds, finding ways to impact the game, knowing they don't have to carry the weight of this team and trusting their teammates. I think that's another thing. I'm not saying they didn't have that trust last season, but I think it's even better. The chemistry is better. The trust is better than it was a season ago. And you're right. We can't take a whole lot from these first 2 games, but I think that those are positive signs. And we're going to find out a lot a week from today when they go to Xavier and get that first real big test.
Yeah, I look forward to that. And, again, talking about the free throws or whatever it is, the sheer fact that you see what this team is capable of. I don't care who it's against, Bethune-Cookman, Morehead State, or Bloomington South High School. When you can stay locked in like that, it shows this team, they have the capability. But we've known that before. They've been able to shoot free throws for 6 years. They just haven't hit free throws for 6 years because they have not been locked in. Whatever it's really befuddled me. I'm going to be honest with you, because it's been different guys that have come in and it's been weird. But just to see that is so refreshing, because that's a small detail. And when you're breaking down those kinds of small details, that way the other details are getting covered. The passes that this team makes, the amount of assists, the touches that guys get in transition, they're always looking for a better shot. I've seen several 3-point shots passed up that probably would have been forced up last season, because they know that, you've got either Trace Jackson Davis, Race Thompson, Malik Renew, Jordan Geronimo roaming around the paint area. That could be it's definitely one of, if not the most formidable front court threesome there is, and that's because of the emergence of Malik Renew. Alec, I mean, Indiana, we knew that they were going to be kind of deep, but his emergence as basically a third starter really elevates this team to. This is going to, I keep saying this, he's going to be problems for teams, but Indiana is going to be problematic because, man, you've beaten banged for the first 10, 11 minutes of the game. And so you get your big guy out for a breather. Trace goes out for a breather, but in comes Malik Renew. What the hell are you going to do with him? He's as good or better than Trace, but worse because he can step out and hit a 3 on you. And so do they have a guy that can guard that? Indiana just has so many options and ways to make it difficult on teams this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think you look just past even Malik Renew and you look at that bench as a whole, right? Trace Jackson Davis played the first 7 minutes, kind of 6.5 of that game last night. And then Indiana's bench took over and went on a 22 run just without any of those starters realistically in. Xavier Johnson played a little of those minutes, but you didn't have Race Thompson, you didn't have Miller Kopp, you didn't have your All-American and Trace Jackson Davis, and you went on a 20-2 run. And I think obviously the bench as a whole, through the first 2 exhibition games, the first 2 games of the regular season here, it's now becoming a trend that you can rely on. where even if all four of those guys in the rotation off of the bench aren't hitting every single night, you have a lot of confidence that at least two of those guys are. And I think one of the more underrated parts of this team that really no one has talked about through the first, two games has been the confidence of Jordan Geronimo. You look back to how his season ended last year, 15 points against Wyoming in the first four game, still had a really solid outing, 9 points against St. Mary's when pretty much no one played well. And then the first two games of this season in double digits as well, averaging 10.5 through the first two here. So that three out of his four last games have been in double figures. Again, yes, a little bit of the competition that he's playing, but at the same time, had a step in three in transition last night, no hesitation, basically almost the exact same shot, just in the middle of the floor there, a quick turnaround from about 17, 18 feet to break that zone, no hesitation. Obviously, his defense is going to be there, showed some nice things in the half court as well out on the perimeter. And his growth, I think that was the biggest question mark that I had coming into this year, is everyone was talking about the emergence of Tamar Bates and Jordan Geronimo and how they were going to help this team. But with Malik Renew and everyone kind of expecting him to kind of man the first big guy off of the bench, how was Jordan Geronimo going to fit into that? And I think he's fit in, if not as well as he could, better. I mean, he has put a different type of kind of versatility on the wing and in that front court with his athleticism. Not to knock any of those other forwards that Indiana has, but Jordan Geronimo has the most athletic ability out of that front court. And when you add him into that trio that you already have and have him playing at this level, that's something special when you put those four guys out there against anyone's front court. The experience, the length, the athleticism, the versatility that all four of those guys bring, that front court is I think one of the best in the entire country.